What's up guys, it's Will back again with another review, and a new beanie. It's actually like brownish, it might look the same color on screen, but it's definitely different. Either way, today's review is X-Men Apocalypse that I actually just got out of a few hours ago. As I said in a previous video, I'll be releasing my non-spoiler filled reviews either on the release date of a movie or the day after until I figure out how to gain access to early screenings and such. But anyway, let's go ahead and dive into one of the most highly anticipated movies of this year, X-Men Apocalypse. So X-Men Apocalypse is the fourth X-Men film directed by Bryan Singer, and this time around the film takes place somewhere in the 1980s and follows younger versions of our beloved mutants. If you've seen the predecessor to Apocalypse, which is Days of Future Past, you've already been given a glimpse into some of our younger mutants and how their personalities, values, and loyalties may somewhat differ from their older selves you may have seen from the early X-Men films in the early 2000s. And I really like Days of Future Past because it gave us a combination of old and the new, and really just a pretty damn good story with great action. The best I can say about X-Men Apocalypse is that it's okay. The acting as a whole was okay, the story kind of drags along for what seems like way too long, and the action sequences were really kind of anticlimactic. Like I've done with pretty much every movie I see, I usually scope out Rotten Tomatoes to see what some other critics are saying about the film. I saw the poor reviews and pretty much like I always do, I was like, well, maybe it'll still be good because I often do disagree with some of these critics. It seems like some of them just don't like superhero movies at this point, but that's just my take on it. I'll say this though, X-Men Apocalypse is definitely better than some people are giving it credit for, but not by a significant margin, and I'll explain why. Let's start as we usually do with the plot. In my opinion, the plot takes way too long to progress. The movie's runtime is just under 2.5 hours, and there were a lot of instances where I was just sitting there like tapping my shoes saying like, come on, I want to see some action. This is a very dialogue-intensive superhero film, and while it's admirable that Bryan Singer and Fox, I guess, wanted to try something a little bit different than other superhero films, it's not really what I expected or wanted. I've always said this because I truly believe it. If you go into a film with a certain expectation and that expectation is not met, even if you might think the film is well done, you're gonna walk out of that theater disappointed. I went into this movie thinking that there was gonna be lots of fight scenes, mutants kicking each other's asses, and showing off their cool powers, and a serviceable story to move the plot along. When I walked out of the theater, I feel like I really only got one of those things to the amount and level that I really wanted, and that's a serviceable plot. The plot was okay and had its moments, but it felt to me like it was just jumping around a lot and not progressing nearly fast enough for me. I mean, I'm even having trouble remembering most things that happened in this movie, and I just got out of there like a couple hours ago. It seems like everything just kind of got jumbled together without any one part really standing out from the others. Like I said, the plot was serviceable, but this film tried to pride itself on plot in my opinion, and it's just not strong enough to carry it. There's a lot of talking and lecturing and recruiting and not nearly enough of the stuff that you really want to see. This may have actually worked for me if the acting were a little bit better. I will say though that the acting was really good by some characters and not so hot from some others. One frustration that I have, and I've seen many people similarly have, is the casting of Jennifer Lawrence as Mystique and how problematic it's become due to Jennifer Lawrence's booming popularity. We all have to remember though that when J-Law was cast for this role years back for X-Men First Class, she was not a huge mega star like she is now. The reason I bring this up is that this film especially tries very, very hard to make Mystique into a hero and a character you really like just because she's Jennifer Lawrence. As you've probably seen in the trailers, Mystique is now like a hero to many mutants, and it's just not the Mystique that we all really know. J-Law did act her parts very well, it's just that her character feels so forced on you as a viewer that it sort of removes you from the immersive experience. She's barely even her blue, natural Mystique self, she's mostly just Jennifer Lawrence. The character that truly steals the show for me is the same one that stole it in very limited screen time in Days of Future Past, and that's Quicksilver, played by Evan Peters. While he's not in this movie a ton, he's definitely awesome whenever he shows up, and the things that his character brings to the screen are visually outstanding and usually pretty funny. He's a witty and sarcastic kid with some pretty awesome powers that provided much needed humor and excitement to this film. Another character who I really liked was Nightcrawler, played by Cody Smith-McPhee. I really liked Nightcrawler back in the older X-Men films, and his younger version is just as awesome here, if not more so. Like Quicksilver, Nightcrawler is both funny and really entertaining in the showcasing of his abilities. Both these characters prove extremely valuable to their fellow mutants in the fight versus Apocalypse. So James McAvoy and Michael Fassbender are both awesome in this film, and the chemistry that these two have together on screen is one of the best parts of it. The performances that these two bring to the relationship of Charles Xavier and Magneto is just outstanding, and it has been ever since X-Men First Class. These two were overall probably the best acted characters in in this film. One thing that bothered me with some of the characters though is something that may not bother you at all, and that's the American accents of our new Jean Grey, played by Sophie Turner, CIA agent Moira McTaggart, played by Rose Byrne, and Beast, played by Nicholas Hoult. Their American accents are just kind of awkward and kind of sucked the immersion factor right out of the film for me once again. Let me clarify this. These are three very good actors, and they're awesome in pretty much every film that they do, but their American accents just sort of threw me off and were kind of jarring because they just didn't sound natural. Now, if you were hoping that you'd get a lot of the Four Horsemen, I'd try and keep your expectations tamed because they just aren't in it very much. They do like one or two cool things each, and that's pretty much it. There's no real time or stage for them to shine. Alright, so now we finally arrived at our villain, Apocalypse, played by Oscar Isaac, who most of you know from his work as Poe Dameron in The Force Awakens. He was much better as a good guy because as Apocalypse, it just didn't work for me. He wasn't compelling to me as a villain because he was almost too powerful, if that makes sense, and he never really does much actual fighting. He just sort of kills whoever stands in his way with a flick of his finger, and poof, there goes all the potential drama or action from that scene. It would have been nice to see more of Apocalypse in action and actual combat with another mutant. And the costume wasn't the greatest to me either. I've seen people say he does bear a resemblance to Ivan Ooze, and I have to say that I agree. The visual effects were outstanding, as they pretty much are in virtually every Marvel movie. The thing is that you don't get near the spectacle or show of them that you probably were hoping for coming into the movie. There's really only one fight scene or showdown of note in this entire film, and it's obviously at the very end. And even then, it felt very anticlimactic because it felt very brief and sort of like an appetizer rather than the main course. And this is supposed to be the ultimate height of the conflict, but it felt more like a battle we should have gotten somewhere in Act 2 maybe. Overall though, I'm going to give X-Men Apocalypse a 6.5 out of 10 for all the reasons I've laid out in this video. Did you guys see X-Men Apocalypse yet? What did you think of it? Drop me a comment and let me know your thoughts. And if you haven't seen it yet, let me know whether or not you're excited to see this movie. That's all for now. This is WillFoxification signing off. See you in the next review.